What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show, here to preview week 3 in the NFL. Myself, Trevor Sikkema, along with Carmen Vitali, the NFL reporter for Fox Sports, here with you guys. And we got a lot of games to get to and a lot of fun to have while we preview all of these games, giving you the matchups that matter, some plus factors, and of course, with a PFF flavor infused in all of it. Carmen, how are we doing today, my friend?
I'm great. How are you?
I am good. We right before we started the show, we talked about how you were remote last show because you were attending a wedding. And now that you are engaged yourself, as am I, once you get engaged, every single wedding that you go to, you're basically just taking notes. Like you're basically there doing recon. You're hardly even enjoying it. It's almost just homework for you at that point. So did you notice anything about the wedding that you went to this past weekend where you were like, you know what? Could do that. Could make that happen.
I'll give you a positive and a not so positive.
Okay.
One of them I thought was really cute is not only did they do like father, daughter, and like mother, son dances.
Classic.
But then they switched. And so like the mother of the bride danced with the groom and the groom.
That's cool.
But yeah, I was like, that's really cute. Like, get to know your in-laws, like clearly you have a good relationship with your in-laws. That's right. That's nice. I really liked that. And then this wedding itself was outside Dallas, about an hour outside of Dallas. And I did not realize that when you get outside of the metropolitan areas in Texas, they are very strict with alcohol. So the bride was trying to take some White Claws home onto the bus to get back to the hotel, and they just would not let her. And I'm like, okay, note to self, not that I was going to, but I'm definitely not getting married in Texas.
Or if you do, you just got to pre-pack the White Claws. That's all you got to do. You just got to make sure that you plan ahead of time. You said that the wedding was in Denton, which, by the way, before we get to our first game here, she said Denton, Texas, and it immediately made me think, like, is that Friday Night Lights? Is that the show or the movie or something? So if you're out there and you're a football fan and you've seen all of these football movies, is Denton, Texas from a football movie? I feel
because it was Permian. It was Permian in Friday Night Lights, right?
But the movie, I don't know. The show is
the book was too. Actually, I don't think I ever saw the show or the movie. I just read the book.
Denton, Texas. That's all I'm saying. It sounds
Let
like
me know because
powerhouse.
It does. And honestly, there was like nothing else out there. We did not see. There was a Buc-ee's. That's how you should know that like it's in the middle of nowhere. Is there was a Buc-ee's.
Well, look, that is the mecca of the South, no matter what. So there will be absolutely no Buc-ee slander on this show at all whatsoever. Not this episode, not this season, not on my watch. All right, let's get into the first game here as we preview all of these NFL games. Patriots at Jets coming up tonight. I've gotten better at saying tonight as we preview the weeks on Thursday. And so it's Thursday.
It's hard to keep track of days.
It is a little tough. So tell me the matchup that matters. What are you looking forward to in this game? And how do you think that it's going to play out?
Yeah, it's got to be Breece Hall, right? Versus Pat's front seven. The Patriots defense, while I do think it's an underrated unit and they've got some dudes on that unit and they're very well coached under Gerard Mayo. They are 25th ranked EPA per play versus the run through the first 2 weeks of the season. So that is kind of where you can gash them is on the ground. Hall is top 10 in yards after contact. We know he's a bowling ball. So there's the initial stop, but then there's also the wrap up that needs to happen with Breece Hall. And I really think that is going to be something that the Jets lean heavily on as Aaron Rodgers still gets used to his receivers. And then more importantly, they get used to him because of all of the different things that come with playing with Aaron Rodgers.
Right. And I mean, it's a lot of responsibility, right? I mean, we saw the memes from last week. I think it was last week. Maybe it was from week 1, where the camera just pans so hard onto Rodgers' face after he throws the pick. And the meme caption was just like, why is bro looking at me like I threw the pick? And that's kind of like how it is when you play with Aaron Rodgers. So there's a lot of responsibility that you have as a wide receiver to sort of be exactly where you need to be reliable in all those areas. And so I actually think that it was pretty great by Rodgers to play. I suppose the way to say it is patiently, the way that he did last week. I mean,
Yes.
it was they didn't make that win look easy against the Titans. And I wonder how many quarterbacks around the NFL, even the great ones, would have had the patience to just say, hey, we're doing the right things. The Titans probably going to give us an opportunity to win this game at the end of the game. We just can't screw it up for ourselves. And Aaron Rodgers didn't stuff the stat sheet, but he was very patient in what he was able to do. So I'm actually going to flip to the opposite side, but talk about the exact same thing. I'm going to talk about the Jets run defense versus the Patriots run game, because we think about this Jets defensive line, and going into the season, we just went, oh yeah, going to be one of the best defensive lines in the NFL again. And it's still a really talented defensive line, but they're not playing up to the level that they have in the past. When you look at the Jets specifically in run defense, 46.0 run defense grade in these last 2 weeks. That's 28th in the NFL, and they're 25th in EPA allowed per rush. So that is an area where you can really attack this team. And thankfully for the Patriots, it's something that they do very, very well. 77.9 rushing grade for the Patriots, which is 7th best in the league through 2 weeks, and 8th in EPA per run. Exactly, right. And I think this offensive line is playing better than I thought that they were going to, certainly with some of those young guys as well. So it's one of these games where I think the Jets really need sort of a gut check here for their defensive line, because it looked tough for them to defend the run the way that they wanted to over the last 2 weeks, last week specifically, though. And so that's going to be a major telling point of who ends up winning this game, I think, of what happens in the trenches there. Agreed.
Who you guys? And actually, that rolls right into my plus factor, which is Will McDonald, because Jermaine Johnson is out. So not only are you going to have to get better along this Jets defensive line, they're going to have to be more productive. They're going to have to do it without one of their best players. So how can Will McDonald step up? He has already the third most pressures on the team with 5. Jermaine Johnson led the team before he got injured. So now it's time to move to first, big guy. It's time to really step up and make sure you're filling that gap that Jermaine Johnson is inevitably going to leave.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. They drafted Will McDonald in the first round basically for this reason. You know, you draft him in round 1 when the D line was already solidified. It was already a deep unit, and they kind of just said like, hey, we want, as Ollie Conley said it on the Trenches show from Tuesday, he's like, the Jets want this hockey rotation. They want to be able to bring in guys very quickly, keep them fresh, and basically just have them penetrating up the line of scrimmage at all times. And it's getting more difficult for them to do that this year, specifically because of the injuries, specifically because you don't have Bryce Huff, you don't have Hassan Reddick to replace him. So this is a big Will McDonald game. I agree. That's definitely a plus factor in this one. Mine is a little bit more of an obvious with the plus factor, but Garrett Wilson, it has to be. You know, you sort of joked about it at the very top, you know, Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers connection. It's been very heavy, like how the passing game has revolved around Garrett Wilson, but he has been able to deliver, especially when they have needed it most. On 3rd and 4th down specifically, Garrett Wilson has a 91.6 receiving grade. He's got 6 targets, 5 catches, all 5 gaining a first down, 70 yards in 3rd and 4th down situations. And so it might not look pretty in the early downs with the passing game right now, as Rodgers is kind of trying to figure it out with the rest of his group. But for Wilson specifically, when Rodgers goes, okay, we need a first down, ball's going to Garrett Wilson, doesn't matter. He's putting it exactly where it needs to go, and Wilson is delivering. So he is, but I don't know. I don't know who else steps up for them at this wide receiver room. I thought it was going to be Allen Lazard. I thought he was going to be better. I know it hasn't been as good as he was in Green Bay, but man, it just still does not look as good as it can there. It really just feels like it's going to be a run the ball and Garrett Wilson show for the New York Jets.
I do wonder if it's more that Aaron Rodgers is trying to force the ball to Allen Lazard, because that is supposed to be kind of his safety net given the rapport he has from Green Bay, or if it's that no one else is stepping up. I'm not totally sure as to that kind of dynamic, and I think that that's only going to come to light like as Rodgers does get more used to the receiving weapons he has and just the pass game in general in New York, because he really this is the first iteration of it that we're seeing. Like, Rodgers only had 4 snaps last season. He didn't play in preseason this year, at least in the games. So I think that is it just that these guys haven't come to light yet because he's forcing the ball to the familiar target? Or is it because they really don't have anybody else? And I don't know the answer to that question, but I think we're going to end up finding out pretty soon. We're going to have to, because it can't just be Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall as it's been.
Yeah, I think obviously Jets sitting here at 1-1. If they want to get to where they want to go, it's got to look a little easier than this.
Yeah, for
Even
sure.
man, even Brees Hall's rushing production. I mean, it just looks like it's tougher for them right now. And so I think that the Patriots are turning into a better barometer type of game for that than maybe we believed at the beginning of the season. Maybe there's plenty of people, myself included, who were, thinking that the Patriots could have been pushovers all season. Not that I didn't think that Gerard Mayo wasn't going to have these guys playing as best they could, but it was tough. You look on paper versus the Jets, what they're supposed to be. So if they can play well against the Jets, if the Jets can play well against the Patriots, especially on the well, actually, no, this one's at home for the Jets. So I'm still going to say it. If they can play well against the Patriots, it will be a good statement game for them moving forward. So let's go to the 1 p.m. games that we have on Sunday. First one I want to touch on is Texans Vikings, because this one, I don't know if it's so sneaky anymore. I was going to say sneaky, interesting game, but I don't know if it's sneaky anymore because
I don't think it is. I think everybody knows it's going to be a fun one.
People know that the Vikings are for real now, right? JJ McCarthy goes down in the preseason. People are just like, oh, no, there it went for the Vikings. And Sam Darnold's like, I got you. Y'all forgot. And he just turned back into USC version of Sam Darnold. So what's the matchup that matters here for you in this one that is no longer sneaky fun, just plain old fun?
It's just plain old fun. And what is plain old fun is Brian Flores' defense and just the variety that exists there. So my matchup that matters is literally everybody on the Vikings defense that is involved in the pass rush versus the Houston O-line. And that varies the simulated pressures. I mean, Brian Flores, I think, is one of the best at presenting something pre-snap and then changing to something completely different, something that seems even unfathomable. And that's not just with the front, that's also with the back level with what he's doing with safeties. I think I saw some 2 corners go back and take the deep halves rather than safeties, which you're used to seeing. I mean, these guys are starting up on the line and go like it's absolutely impossible for a young quarterback to decipher exactly what Brian Flores' defenses are trying to do. And that is going to be no more apparent than with the pass rush in general. Brian Flores is actually blitzing a lot less than he was last year. He led the league in blitzes. I think he blitzed over half the time. Now it's more in that 30% range.
What? Is that allowed? Tiger changing his stripes? Is that allowed?
Yes.
I thought that wasn't a thing.
It's so interesting to me too, because the blitzes weren't exactly manifesting into pressures or sacks. Like you weren't getting the actual production out of the blitzes last year. Now he's blitzing less, but they're getting more sacks. The Vikings lead the league in sacks right now. They're right up there with pressures too. And they're leaders in pressures. And I think that everybody thought, Danielle Hunter was leaving. This was going to be a massive hole. But what you forget is that Brian Flores, his entire time in Miami, never had a double-digit sack guy. Danielle Hunter in Minnesota really was the first time he had that dude. And now he has 2 dudes on either side of this defensive line, and Jonathan Grenard and now the first-round pick Dallas Turner that could turn into double-digit sack guys. Jonathan Grenard was a double-digit sack guy in 2023 for Houston. So it is allowing him to do so many different things up at the line itself where he is only bringing 4, but he's showing cover 0 because he's got all the guys up on the line and he's dropping a ton of them back. It's so much fun to watch. I would not want to go up against them if I were a quarterback, and that is what CJ Stroud is going to have to deal with. So this O-line is going to have to also figure out where they need to set their protections when they see all of these exotic looks from Brian Flores' defensive front.
Did you see Brock Purdy after the game last week go up to Brian Flores? Did you see this clip?
Like your scheme.
He just puts his hand on his shoulder and he's like, that scheme's crazy, man. And then he just keeps walking. Like, that was it. He just he didn't really want to have a conversation with Flores. He just wanted Flores to know that he put him in hell mentally all game. And so I think it's a really great shout out. Obviously, what you mentioned about Danielle Hunter and sort of that sub in with Jonathan Grenard coming over. I talked about this with Dalton Wasserman on the review show that we did on Monday. And I think people, myself included, looked at this Danielle Hunter, Jonathan Grenard swap for the Texans and the Vikings, and we were just like, oh, okay. Like, I like Hunter more, so I still think that the Texans got the better player, but it's kind of just like a 1-in, 1-out. That's not really what happened. No. Actually, they traded, and both sides got better. Both sides got what they wanted. The Texans wanted more of a pass rushing defensive end in Hunter, and the Vikings, because of Flores, wanted an edge rusher who was more of an outside linebacker type, who would stand up for you, who could drop back. That's why you're pairing it with Dallas Turner. And so that's why you're pairing it with
Andrew Van Ginkel. I didn't mention him.
100%,
I need to mention him.
100%. Yeah. And so I just think that they've got, not that it's all stars at every position, but a really ideal setup with the type of defensive players they have to be able to run what Flores wants to run. So I think it's a really great call up by you. I definitely think that's a matchup that matters. I will once again flip sides and say that I think the Texans edge rushers specifically versus the Vikings offensive tackles are going to be a big time matchup in this game. And I'm mainly talking about Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson going up against Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill. I think that that's one of the best tackle duos that we have in the NFL. When you look at Darrisaw and O'Neill, that duo, if you're just looking at offensive tackles, 10th in the NFL in pass blocking, graded as 76.1. They're 9th in the NFL in sacks allowed with just 1 amongst the two of them. And then they're 7th in pressures allowed. Those two have only given up a combined 6 pressures all season. But if you flip sides and you go over to Hunter and Anderson, 7th in the NFL in total pressures with 20, 4th in the NFL with 4 sacks between the two of them. So I just think that for as much as I think a lot of people are going to talk about Sam Darnold, or a lot of people are going to talk about CJ Stroud, they're going to talk about sort of the quarterbacks that are kind of going head to head here, and the two great head coaches and Kevin O'Connell as an offensive guy versus DeMeco Ryans defensive guy. I think that that's all noteworthy and worth kind of bringing up, but it trenches. This is where this game is going to be won and lost on both sides. So I think that that's a good theme that we both have here with our matchup that matters. But what's the plus factor for you?
Yeah, well, I went obvious on the plus factor here, and that was Sam Darnold. It's going to be very interesting because DeMeco Ryans is so familiar with this Shanahan McVay scheme that Kevin O'Connell runs. It's a reason that Sam Darnold has absolutely thrived under Kevin O'Connell, because I think he is one of the, if not the most underrated coach in this league. What he was able to do last year after Kirk Cousins went down, on top of now the resurgence of Sam Darnold. I want to make sure this is for real, but at the same time, DeMeco Ryans is going to know exactly what to expect out of this offense. So how can Sam Darnold combat that? Can he continue the tear that he's been on? I mean, he's top 3 in passing grade, 2nd in passing yards per attempt. He's absolutely slinging it, 9.2 yards per attempt. He's 9th in average depth of target too, so he's pushing it down the field. Receivers are doing some really good things for him. Justin Jefferson is now battling that ankle injury. Jordan Addison is battling an ankle. His receivers are, they're beat up a little bit, but can they scheme up something that is going to beat this DeMeco Ryans defense? The chess match between them is going to be incredible. I know they're going to have a really good plan. It's just a matter of how much Sam Darnold can execute it.
Yeah, the chat's doing a good job also saying, hey, shout out Patrick Jones II, the edge rusher for the Vikings. Already got 3 sacks on the season. I will gladly note that, because I was a Patrick Jones defender in the draft class when he was coming out, and I was like, this dude's got juice.
He does.
I'm telling you. And
5 pressures. Really has
not, he really has not kind of come into his own until this season, but never wrong, just early. That's what they said. My plus factor in this one is Tank Dell. I'm looking for Tank Dell and CJ Stroud to get that connection going a little bit better. He's targeted Dell 11 times this season, but only 4 catches. Dell has a drop, only 37 yards, 2 catches, gaining a first down. I think we're going to start to see more of Tank Dell as the season goes on and they continue to get more comfortable with one another. But that was a really good connection last year before Dell got hurt. So I'm sort of surprised that it's off to a little bit of a slow start. Now, you add Stephon Diggs to the mix, and he's got to get his targets, and Nico Collins is always going to get his as well. So it's just maybe a timing type of a thing of when I'm going to him. But I even would have felt like, hey, 11 targets for Dell, would have thought the catch rate would be higher than just bringing in 4 of those catches. So I'm looking for that chemistry to be a little bit better. If they continue to catch, or if they start to catch fire this upcoming weekend, then we could really see some fireworks here. I think it was Brandon in the chat. Yeah, Brandon said Texans will win 27-13. So Brandon, if you hit it on the nose, you have to come back into the chat next week for the show and make sure that you do your victory lap here. So next game, Green Bay Packers at the Tennessee Titans. Titans need a dub, but Packers, man, they look, Jordan Love goes down week 1. You go, oh boy, that's it. This is tough. Who knows? And they bounce back in a big way in week 2. So what do you think about this one? Matchup that matters. What do you got?
Yeah, it's the Green Bay offensive backfield. I'm not just going to limit it to Josh Jacobs because we saw so many different guys carry the ball for the Green Bay Packers in that game last week against the Tennessee linebackers. Whoever decides to contend with that, it's really hard when you get Jaden Reed out into space to keep up with him. And that's going to be something that I think that the Green Bay Packers continue to do if Malik Willis is the one that starts. We did see that Jordan Love is practicing for the second straight day today. I still think that
Right.
you're a little cautious with Jordan Love because you know that you're going to need him for the long run. And when you are able to scheme up solutions like Matt LaFleur is for your offense and still put points on the board, still be productive against like this is a Tennessee defense that is, I think, really underrated too. I talked about that even in week 1 with that defensive front going against the Chicago Bears. It's not an easy time. But if Matt LaFleur has these solutions for these guys, why not use them one more week? So especially if you can get everybody involved in the ground game, not only, like I said, Josh Jacobs, but you had Jaden Reed, who had 2 rushes for 37 yards last week. You had even Bo Melton, who had like carried the ball. And it's one of those things where Green Bay has so many weapons that have a variety of skill sets that you can just do so many different things. So can those Tennessee linebackers keep up with what Matt LaFleur wants to do on offense? And then Malik Willis can pick his spots. And I mean, we saw him make a couple really good throws when he wasn't forced to be the guy. Right. And again, which no one can blame him for. I mean, I know that we haven't seen great things out of Malik Willis, but thus far in his career. But at the same time, this is a guy that got there at the end of training camp for the Green Bay Packers. He's not familiar with their scheme. So this is something completely different that Matt LaFleur is running than what he was planning on doing with Jordan Love. And it's working. So we'll see. I'm very curious to see what they end up doing with Jordan Love and if Malik Willis does indeed start this game.
Yeah, you look at Willis's stat line last week, 12 for 14, 122 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. I mean, they just didn't ask of him a lot in the passing game. And I think that's because they were able to run the ball so well. And I think that it's a hat tip to what you said and sort of the creativity of how they were able to do that. But, at the same time, Josh Jacobs, 32 carries, like that just doesn't happen very often in today's NFL. And they were like, no, you're the workhorse. And he still had a 4.
This is why we brought you here.
No, 100%. This is why we brought you here game. And it's like, hey, we think that we could give you a large carry load at certain points during the season when we need it. They definitely need it from him. And, Jordan Love goes down, Malik Willis comes in. You mentioned, he doesn't even come in until the end of training camp. The Indianapolis Colts knew what the Packers were going to do. They were going to run the football, right? You have a rushing quarterback, a dual threat quarterback, and then you bring in Josh Jacobs. Like, that's what the Packers were going to do. And the Colts have a pretty good defensive line, and yet they couldn't stop it. And I think it's less of a indictment on the Colts defensive line, and I think it's actually more of a, hey, kudos to what the Packers offensive line was able to do. In week 2, they had the 3rd most yards before contact in the NFL. So, like, sure, Josh Jacobs, give him the golf clap. Obviously, it's a great week for him, high production. 3rd most yards before contact. That means the boys up front are doing their job. They also had the 5th best pass blocking grade. So not only did they do well in the run blocking game, they also did very well in the pass blocking game, 79.1 overall as a team. Right now, they are 1st in the NFL in rushing yards with 427 and 1st in rushes of 10 or more yards with 14. So kind of to your point, what LaFleur is doing in the backfield is sort of becoming their identity. And we went into this season, and I know it was the craze of fantasy football, all talking about, receivers, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, like what all these guys, what are they going to do in the passing game? You got Tucker Kraft, you got Luke Musgrave. What are they going to do in the pass game? The potential is endless. And really, Packers' identity is running the football right now. I know Jordan Love hasn't come back and he's been out, but right now that they are a rushing football team, and they're doing it damn well. So I think that's certainly something that you've got to monitor versus the Titans run defense, which ranks 31st in the league as in total PFF grade in that category at a 39.8. So another right matchup for them to play very well. But what's your plus factor in this game?
I'm going to go to the other side of the ball for Green Bay, and it's Kenny Clark, because we saw what he was able to do against the Colts. He's able to get pressure from the interior, and that is the easiest way to get pressure on a quarterback is right up the middle. You've got the least amount of space to go before you hit him. He's Packers leader in pressure. He's got 7 pressures, and then followed by Devontae Wyatt, you see right there, 6 pressures right behind him. So you have this interior defensive line for the Green Bay Packers that is making life easy on guys like Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith. They switched to this 4-3 defense under Jeff Hafley, and that is exactly what you need. You need pressure from the interior when you have those 4-man fronts. So that's going to force Will Levis into some bad situations. He's got the 5th worst passing grade when under pressure, ranks 28th in passer rating when he's under pressure, NFL passer rating when he's under pressure. So that's going to lead to some turnovers. That's going to lead to some extra chances for this Green Bay offense. And that's going to stop some drives for the Tennessee Titans and, stop them from putting any points on the board, which is exactly how this defense can help out its offense if Jordan Love is again still out. Even if he's in, you don't want to put too much on him. You don't want to make him go out there and have to score 40 points in this game. So not that we haven't seen that from Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans quite yet. But the surefire way to win this game is to limit the points and run the football. And that's what they're going to try to do.
Yeah. Coming off a sprained MCL, even if Jordan Love goes out there and plays, Jordan Love is my plus factor in this game because it's every definition of the term plus factor is like if Jordan Love can play, I agree with you. I don't think that he's throwing for 300 yards or anything, but they're going to continue to run the ball. They're going to make that their bread and butter this game, especially because, like I said, the Titans defensive line so far through the season tells you that they're weak in that area. You're going to do that until they can stop you. And then if they can stop you, if Love is in there, you're hoping that he just gives you a handful of passes to continue to keep drives going, convert on 3rd down, get into scoring position, those kinds of things. So Jordan Love, for as good as he played at the end of last season, has to be the plus factor. If he goes, even if he is not quite 100% what he was last season, you got to have faith that he can make a couple of throws that'll get you the win on the road in Tennessee. Giants at Browns. All right. Matchup that matters here for this game. Who you got?
I'm going to go with the obvious here, and it's Myles Garrett versus Daniel Jones. Cleveland has the 2nd most sacks in the league through 2 weeks behind Minnesota. So the weird part is basically the Browns defense either sacks you or doesn't get pressure because they rank 25th in total pressures through 2 games. It's really interesting. Like they're super efficient, right? Like if they get to the they either get to the quarterback or they don't. They are tied.
That was the Colts. That was the Colts last year. I think the Colts were like 3rd in sacks, but they were 25th in total pressures in the NFL, which was like very, very weird, which is why I liked a lot to pick for them. But
the inverse of that was true for Brian Flores' defense last year, which was also funny. But the what I really appreciate though is that PFF has a stat, the beaten by defender stat, which means they did beat whoever was their blocker, but they just didn't register a pressure for whatever reason. Cleveland ranks 5th in those kinds of plays. So that makes kind of a lot of sense where your guys are still winning. You're just not, for whatever reason, tallying those kinds of pressures. So I do think that that's still going to affect Daniel Jones. I would worry about Daniel Jones if he's not going into this game accounting for Myles Garrett or a little bit scared of what Myles Garrett can do. That's going to have to be that the extension of that is obviously the New York Giants offensive line, which we have seen not good things out of so far this season. But you got to account for him. You got to get the ball out quickly. I think lean on your run game a little bit more if you're Daniel Jones. It's going to be interesting how they game plan for this Browns defensive front.
Yeah, you've got to be able to do something to slow him down a little bit because Myles Garrett has the talent to be a game wrecker, as we saw with him winning Defensive Player of the Year last year. My matchup that matters is the one where if you stop Malik Neighbors on offense for the Giants, you
stop
win.
Their offense.
Right. Like I think that's kind of it at that point. I think that's the formula for beating the Giants until they become a little bit more diverse in what they're able to do, whether it's in the run game or have some other receivers show up. And it's not like other receivers have not caught passes at all. But Carmen, to put it in perspective, last week, Neighbors got 18 targets in last week's game out of 28 total throws that they threw. That's a 63.0% wide receiver usage or threat percentage that we keep track of. That is the highest single game performance that we have tracked in the PFF era, which goes back all the way to 2006. Yes, wild. That means that it is more than Brandon Marshall's record-breaking 21 catch game back in 2009. He had a higher catch percentage, or not catch percentage, wide receiver usage percentage than Brandon Marshall did in that game. So that just shows you the kind of emphasis that he is in the offense, and with good reason, right? He's very talented. Leads the NFL with 5 catches of gaining 20 yards or more. He's got 106 yards after the catch, which is top 10. It's 7th among active players right now. 9 catches gaining a first down, which is tied for 3rd most in the NFL. And so he is rewarding them for targeting him. But I hope we get a lot of him versus Denzel Ward on the other side. And Ward's been dealing with a shoulder injury. I read earlier in the week that he was sort of on a pitch count against Jacksonville. Stefanski's hoping that he's not really on a pitch count in this game. And I think if he's not, he should be up against Malik Neighbors more often than not, because in the 5-ish quarters that Denzel Ward has played so far this season, 82.4 coverage grade on 38 snaps. He's already got 4 forced incompletion, and he should have had an interception. He had dropped interception, so he should already have an interception as well. And that's just in 5 quarters. And the thing about Denzel Ward as well that makes this very unique of a matchup is Ward as a corner, one of his calling cards is how explosive he is and how well he can change direction as a corner. That's also Malik Neighbors' bread and butter, right? The footwork, the quick moves, the explosiveness. And so you're getting best on best here with these two guys. And so I hope Ward's fully healthy, because I want to see a full game of these two guys going at it, because I think it's going to be a fireworks show. But who's the plus factor here for you in this one?
Well, it goes along with what I was talking about earlier in you have to run the ball. And that's Devin Singletary. The Giants' time of possession ranks 24th in the league. They are not holding on to the ball. They're not doing their defense any favors. They're not sustaining drives. So run the damn ball, control the clock. The issue is Cleveland has a very sound run defense. They are top 10 in EPA per play versus the run, and they have the 5th fewest missed tackles versus the run. They are just a solid defense all around. These guys do not miss. And it's going to be tough, but the Giants have to find a way to sustain these offensive drives and to stay on the field, or the Giants offense does, because it's putting way too much pressure on their defense, and that's not helping anybody.
Yeah, I think the plus factor here is Jerome Ford, because, when you look at what Cleveland's been doing on offense over the last couple of weeks, I believe Deshaun Watson is number 1 in the NFL in like total passing dropbacks or attempts. Or at least top 5 in that category. They're just asking him to throw the ball a lot. And in fact, I was looking up a stat the other day. I was actually looking it up for Caleb Williams, how often the Chicago Bears have him in empty with no protection and a lot of receivers. The Browns were number 1 in the NFL at empty with no help and 5 wide receivers. So it's like, hey, let's balance things out a little bit more here. Let's get a run game going. And look, I know you don't have Nick Chubb. Jerome Ford, I think he's my plus factor in this one. 44 yards in week 1, 64 rushing yards in week 2. But this can be a little bit of a get-right game for him. Giants have allowed the 2nd most rushes of 10 or more yards in the league so far through 2 weeks. That is 13. And this should be, again, a nice matchup for him to have his best week and allow the Browns to be more balanced on offense than they have been through week 1 and week 2. So I've got him as the plus factor there. Bears at Colts. Speaking of the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams, didn't even do that on purpose. What is your matchup that matters here in this one, Carmen?
Yeah, it goes back to the Bears offensive line. And we saw so many miscommunications last week against the Texans. And I mean, again, that's to be expected with a D'Amico Ryans defense like that. They do so many different things up front. It's hard. Also, the Bears are placing so much responsibility, pre-snap responsibility, on Caleb Williams. And in his 2nd game in the league, I think it's too much. Clearly, the offensive line was not on the same page in so many different aspects. I mean, specifically, there were times where, again, those exotic fronts that D'Amico Ryans likes to run, especially on 3rd down. Usually, offensive lines have a set plan, and they stick with that plan the entire game. If it doesn't work out, and there's a guy that goes unblocked, then it's up to the quarterback to know where his hot routes are, how to get the ball out quickly, all that kind of stuff. But there was no consistency whatsoever in what the Bears offensive line plan was against stuff like that. That's just one example of just the myriad miscommunications that happened. That can't keep happening. This is the unit that's supposed to have the most continuity on the Bears offense this season. And it's going against this Indianapolis D-line who is not going to have DeForest Buckner. You're going to have an opportunity there to kind of get right, not only in pass blocking, which the Bears are 21st in pass blocking grade. They're 8th highest pressure percentage allowed. So Caleb Williams is under pressure. We saw 36 pressures against the Texans that he had to face.
Right.
That's not helping anybody, but also in the run game, because Caleb Williams needs to be helped out by the rest of this offense. He is a rookie. You need to make things easier on him. You can do that by running the ball. And I'm not just talking about handoffs either. Get DeAndre Swift in space. DeAndre Swift is not a bowling ball of a running back. He is a guy that you need to get him in space, and then he can go between the tackles and do really fun things after contact. But I don't want to just, a power run game with DeAndre Swift doesn't make sense to me. Throw it to him in the flat, throw it to him just right at the line of scrimmage, get him out into space. The good news is too, for the Chicago Bears, is the Colts average depth of tackle versus the run is the 7th highest of any team. So they are allowing 4.84 yards before they even get to these guys. Do that 2-3 times and you're going to get a first down. It's not going to be sexy, but it's going to keep you on the field, and it's going to open up some things on this Bears offense. So it all runs through this offensive line is what I'm trying to say against this Indianapolis D-line, which is going to be hurting without DeForest Buckner. So
I think that's a great primer. Like they've got to play better than they have before. And you're right, with Buckner out of this lineup, it feels like this is a good week to get right. And I think that's going to be a major part of who ends up winning this game. Another major part of who wins this game is you got Anthony Richardson, you got Caleb Williams, two of the most talented quarterbacks that we have in the league, but two players who are green on experience. I know that, it's the first year for Caleb Williams. He's only 2 games into his NFL career. We only got, 4 games out of Anthony Richardson last year, now 2 this year. So it's not like he's played a lot more ball despite being a year ahead of him with his draft class. 5 turnover-worthy plays for each of these quarterbacks. That's tied for second worst in the NFL. So to me, it simply comes down to who can kind of protect the football more, but also who can get that help from other players around their offense. Now, I would lean Jonathan Taylor in that regard, right? I mean, in week 1, we saw the Colts offensive line be just road graders. Those guys, Will Fries, Quentin Nelson, both of those players, elite above 90 run blocking grades for that game. You know that Jonathan Taylor can be great. And so I sit here, and if I'm going to tell myself, hey, in a world where both of these quarterbacks don't turn the ball over as much as they have been through the first 2 weeks, I think I would give the edge to the Indianapolis Colts offense to do more with certainly the backfield and the running backs and making things a little bit easier. But maybe it is more than that. It's not just necessarily who's going to run the ball better, because it could also come down to, hey, which quarterback takes care of the football, but also which one kind of is able to still then push the ball down the field, because that could also be an X factor in this game. So to me, the matchup that matters is simply quarterback versus quarterback. And maybe the matchup that matters is just Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson versus the voice in their head that tells them just to
the Green Goblin mask. Throw it.
Coward.
Do it.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about here. And so whoever can kind of quell that voice more, but still be able to make the plays that they need to for their team, I think is going to go a long way. So that's going to be a major point of emphasis for both these teams. What about you? Plus factor?
Yeah, I mean, it goes along with my matchup that matters, but it's DeAndre Swift, because if you also watch Caleb Williams too, there have been so many times so far through 2 games where the Bears offense has been in 3rd and short, and then Caleb Williams elects the Green Goblin wins, and he just launches that thing down the field. And he has not been accurate on passes of 15 yards or more. I don't think he's completed one, quite honestly. And that's not the way to do it on 3rd down. The way to do it on 3rd down is to lean on your running backs, whether that is a handoff to DeAndre Swift, or if that's a short pass to DeAndre Swift in the flat. Again, get him in space. That is where DeAndre Swift is good. He's a great pass catching back. That's why you brought him to Chicago. I didn't understand the Roschon Johnson healthy scratch type thing last week. I would like to think that Roschon Johnson is your most physical back, the one that can win between the tackles up front in those inside gaps. That he should be kind of your switch up back. I don't know why he's not in the lineup. There's Khalil Herbert has been in there too. I don't know. You have a running back room with a variety of skill sets. I need the Bears to start using it. And whether that coincides with heavier personnel, multiple backs on the field, use those 2 tight end sets that Shane Waldron is known for so much. But get DeAndre Swift involved. Let him be someone that Caleb Williams can rely on, so that especially in those 3rd and short situations, you're converting instead of going 3 and out.
I do agree with you that they definitely need him. Going back to kind of my point of who can help their quarterback a little bit more. Certainly, Swift is a plus factor in being able to do that. My plus factor here, I'm going to go with Laiatu Latu, the rookie edge rusher for the Indianapolis Colts. You mentioned DeForest Buckner is out. It's not that Latu plays the exact same position that Buckner does, but you just need more production as a group. That's one of the best players that you've got on your defense overall that's not going to be in the lineup. And when you look at Latu, a little bit of a slow start to start this season. One pressure on 28 pass rushing snaps. Now he's going to get to go up against Darnell Wright, who's the right tackle for the Chicago Bears most of this game. 57.0 pass blocking grade, at least if they're lining him up on that side of the line of scrimmage. I suppose they could have him go up against Braxton Jones more, depending on where they want to put their veteran guys. But I think he'll have an opportunity, certainly when he goes up against Darnell Wright, simply because, the hand usage with Laiatu Latu is the part that allowed him to be one of the most productive pass rushers in the country for UCLA over the last 2 years. And that part of his game still exists, and it hasn't really broken out for him yet in terms of tackles in the backfield, but I really do believe that's coming. I wonder if it's coming at some point this week. So Latu, big plus factor for me. Speaking of plus factors, if you guys don't have a PFF Plus subscription, that's kind of the play on words that we have here, changing it from X factor to plus factor, because you can go get yourself a PFF Plus account and see all these premium stats that we're talking about here. You can do your own research as well, whether it's for your fantasy team, whether you just want to talk to your friends and feel like you could give them information they're not going to hear anywhere else. You can get all that great stuff and all the premium stats and everything with a PFF Plus subscription. You can go get one of those over at pff.com. All right, this next game here, 1 p.m. game, very interesting one. Not sure it was going to be so interesting if you would have asked me this 3 weeks ago, but Eagles at Saints. Saints on fire. One of the best teams in the NFL right now. It's crazy.
It is.
All right. So what do we got here? I'm excited to break this one down. Matchup that matters. Who we got?
Very cheekily, Kellen Moore versus himself, because you look at this Philadelphia.
It's a little homage to the Rocky movies, staring in the mirror. This is the toughest opponent. It's Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore's just looking in the mirror, shadow boxing before every game, and he's just like, "That's the toughest opponent you're gonna have today."
I was thinking more of the mirror with the guy pointing at himself in the mirror. Just you.
That works too.
Yeah, no. Well, so here's the thing, though. You watched how the Philadelphia offense started to get going as they started to run Jalen Hurts. Last what was that? Monday night. Mm-hmm. They ran the ball 38 times in week 2, 5th most of any team. And yet, with the game on the line, where you needed to bleed clock on 3rd and 3, you passed the ball to Saquon Barkley. Why? Why did you get so cute? All you had to do was run it. You just you run the ball, and if it was Jalen Hurts, clearly we heard Nick Sirianni. This was like the most baffling thing to me. Nick Sirianni said, "Oh well, there's a mechanism built into that play that if it's not wide open, that he can take a sack. That Jalen Hurts can just take a sack." And I'm like, okay, well if you're not afraid of your quarterback getting hit, then just run your running quarterback and have him sit down at the 1 and bleed the clock. And even from there, you don't even have to kick the field goal at that point. You can still just run again. And if you don't get into the end zone, guess what? Your opponent is starting on the 1 yard line and has to go 99 yards to score. It didn't make any sense to me. None of it made any sense to me. And it was just Kellen Moore, I think, getting a little too cute. I don't know. You're gonna need to score on this New Orleans offense too. So I just run the ball, use Jalen Hurts in the run game, and make sure that you are controlling the clock as much as possible, keeping the ball out of the New Orleans Saints' hands as much as possible, and scoring some points. Just don't get cute. You've got the people to do it.
I wondered if Hurts and a lot of the injuries that he has faced over the last couple of years had really caught up to him, because certainly in week 1, he looked bad. Like he looked a shell of himself, and his PFF grades reflected that. And obviously they got a win, and good for them. But I was worried about Hurts moving forward. He looked much more comfortable on the run as a rushing option this past week. So at least like there is that moving forward. And maybe that was a sort of like a proven situation for Kellen Moore as well. Maybe we'll see that more for him. I'll get a little bit creative with mine as well. My matchup that matters. Clint Kubiak versus the world. And it's not really like a matchup like in this game, but genuinely, that's what it feels like at this point. He comes in from being the pass game coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. Now he's the offensive coordinator of the Saints. And this man's lighting the world on fire. Sure, the players are making it happen. Don't want to take anything away from them being the ones to execute these plays, but holy cow, it's a lot of the same players that were there last year. And the offense was inept. It was frustrating. It was inconsistent. And now you look at this Saints offense, 76.2% scoring drives, which is first in the NFL. They're scoring on 16 of their 21 drives that they have had so far this season. That is number one in the league. They're also second on third down conversions at 57.1%. So when it comes to having long drives, sustaining drives, and putting the ball into the end zone, they're phenomenal at it. And then when it comes to converting on those major key downs of third and fourth down, they're also fantastic at that 2 weeks in. Tied for first in the NFL with 5 passing touchdowns. They have allowed the fewest quarterback pressures through 2 weeks at just 9. The offensive line is balling. And yes, I again think that this is the offensive line playing better, but you better believe out there that play calling and how do I say this? I guess just the overall structure of the offense and what you are going for, the overall game plan of how you are calling these games goes into the types of protections that you have, putting your offensive line in places to succeed. So yes, again, I want to give credit to the players playing better along the offensive line. That's also a Kubiak thing, in my opinion.
Yes.
What he is able to do and how he is calling those plays to help the offensive line be better. So whether it's running the ball, passing the ball, intermediate, deep, long runs, short runs, in the red zone, on third down, they've got to figure it out right now. And I'm very, very excited to see if this is something that could continue, because right now it feels like, when you talk about future offensive hotshots that could be next head coaching candidates, it feels like it's Clint Kubiak versus the world right now. It feels like his name is at the top. Who's your plus factor in this one?
Yeah, and it goes right along with that. It's the Eagles D-line to see if they can disrupt the New Orleans Saints offensive line, which is playing incredibly. And also Derek Carr, when kept clean, has the third best PFF grade. So when he's not under pressure, and that is not something that he's really had to deal with through 2 games, because this offensive line is playing so much better, because Clint Kubiak is scheming it up to make it easier on the offensive line and therefore easier on the rest of the offense. See how these things domino effect of helping out your offensive line. Take notes, Chicago. But the Eagles D-line ranks tied for 11th with 31 pressures through week 2. Josh Sweat, Jalen Carter, Brandon Graham, who is still playing, are all top 3 for the Eagles, and that is going to be their biggest test. This is going to be their biggest test. This is going to be the New Orleans Saints' biggest test. Can the Eagles D-line get to Derek Carr? Can they at least disrupt what Derek Carr and this New Orleans offense have been able to do across the board, even in Dallas at AT&T Stadium against that Cowboys defense, dismantled them completely. So what's the plan? Can the Eagles defensive line get there? And because I think that has to be the key then to slowing down this offense as a whole.
My plus factor in this one's Alvin Kamara, and this might just be a season sort of plus factor for him. Sort of the way that I've talked about Jalen Hurts. I didn't know how much Alvin Kamara had left in the tank at this point of his season, or this point of his career. Early on, I mean, the Saints basically used him in every way possible. They used him as a receiver. They used him as a rusher. He had a ton of usage early on in his career. He's getting close to 30. Actually, is he 30? I can't remember exactly, but he's very close to it. Whatever. He's 29, so he's close to it. You look at what Alvin Kamara has done over the first 2 weeks. He has been incredibly efficient, and he looks like the Alvin Kamara of old in a lot of ways. He's going up against a vulnerable Philadelphia run defense, 42.8 run defense grade, which is 29th in the NFL. That's Philly. 0.112 EPA per rush. That's 31st allowed. And the Saints are a top 5 rushing grade, and they're top 5 in EPA per rush as well. So it is truly a strength versus a weakness. That we talk about the passing game and what Clint Kubiak has done for that, but it's also the run game. And that might just be an easy way for the Saints to continue to rack up points against the Philadelphia Eagles, especially at home in New Orleans, where they play so well. Hey, before we get to our next game, whether it's a TD, a tutty, taking it to the house, in for 6, whatever you want to call a touchdown, one thing is for sure: touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. It can be on the ground, can be in the air, can be from special teams, defense. We don't care how they score them. We just want to bet on touchdowns, right? DraftKings Sportsbook, it is the number one place to bet on touchdowns. If you're ready to place your first bet, try betting on something simple, right? We talked about the Saints offense, how prolific it is. We just gave you a matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. If you are confident in one of those New Orleans Saints players, they're going to score a touchdown, go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your bet today. New DraftKings customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. So you can score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet on touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, it is 877-8-HOPE-NY, or you could text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, visit dkng.co/FTVALL. Broncos at Bucks. The Titan that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the future Super Bowl champions that are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Okay, maybe not, or maybe. We'll figure it out. Broncos kind of struggling heading into Tampa, so tough game for them, tough timing for them. It could be a little bit of a trap game for the Bucs. I don't know. It feels like the Broncos could play better, certainly, than they have been. What is your matchup that matters here, Carmen?
Yeah, I have Broncos corners and Bucs wide receivers because I think that that's going to be the biggest hurdle for the Broncos to clear, and it is probably the Broncos' best unit. You have Pat Surtain going up against Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Denver doesn't really have an offense, so it's not going to take that many points to beat them at this point. Famous last words, I suppose. But the Broncos have but because of Pat Surtain almost exclusively, the Broncos have allowed the fourth fewest passing yards through week 2. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans present a really great tandem. Chris Godwin looks like the old Chris Godwin. 91.7 overall PFF grade. He has got 200 receiving yards, 112 yards after the catch. And that is the most encouraging part to me about Chris Godwin's play this season so far, is that it does really look like he is past this knee injury. I think a lot of us were wondering last year if we were ever going to see the same Chris Godwin again. He is playing fearless. He is going for those extra yards like we got so used to him doing prior to his knee injury. 12 catches for a first down. This is Baker's go-to guy when he needs a first down. And he's not technically the Bucs' number one receiver because, oh, by the way, that's Mike Evans, who ties for first in the league right now with 2 red zone touchdowns. So we know that Mike Evans is a red zone god because of his length and his, the F it, Mike Evans is down there somewhere type attitude that Baker can have. But that's going to be a tall task for Pat Surtain in general, just because I don't even know who you put him on then. I do also think, though, that now seeing the injuries that are coming out in Tampa Bay, where Vita Vea has not practiced for a second straight day, Kalijah Kancey has still not, there's going to be a lot of trench issues for the Buccaneers here that could kind of sway that into that being more the matchup that matters. But I'll get to that in my plus factor too.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we could probably just go in and out here with this one because I see your plus factor here that we have on the show sheet. But my matchup that matters, it's Broncos offensive line versus the Buccaneers defensive line, because it sort of has to be a good performance here for the Broncos, especially on the interior, right? No Kalijah Kancey, probably no Vita Vea in this one. Broncos have allowed 29 pressures in pass protection, which is the 5th most in the league. And when you look at the Bucs' total defensive line, Kancey hasn't played yet. Vita has, and he's not going to be in there. He's not like a super pass rush specialist. So I think a lot of the other guys are sort of holding up these numbers. The Bucs defensive line, they're 6th in total pressures in the NFL with 40. They're 2nd in pass rush win rate at 55.1%. But they're only 27th in sacks. They just have 2 sacks on the season. So they're creating pressures, they're winning, they're getting disruption, but they aren't bringing down the quarterback. And I think that's going to be a key part of this. Can Tampa's defensive line be even better at finishing those plays this week against the Broncos O-line? And then on the flip side, this is sort of like, it's got to be a gut check game for the Broncos offensive line. And not because like, oh, you better play good against the Bucs defensive line because I just listed they're playing pretty good themselves. But you've already had 2 down weeks. It doesn't get easier throughout the NFL. Like, it just doesn't. It like trench play is difficult every single week. If they have a 3rd bad week in a row, the O-line here, I'm going to start getting real worried about this team. Like, I'm going to start getting real worried about, I don't know if it gets better in time for the Broncos to not be a team with a top 5 pick next year. And shoot, maybe that's what they want for development. I don't know. But just looking for wins and losses perspective, it's got to be a get right game for the Broncos, at least a lot better than what is in the first 2 weeks. And then Tampa, it's an opportunity for them to get Bo Nix and a rookie quarterback on the ground more than they have, converting those pressures.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that that's the key part here, and why the Broncos offensive line has to be a plus factor for me is that you are risking the development of your young quarterback. Bo Nix is still very young, though he played a lot in college. But at the NFL level, he has not seen success because his offensive line has not allowed for that. And that is what can really screw up a quarterback when in the beginning of his career, he starts not trusting his offensive line. He's seeing ghosts. He's not, letting routes develop, and his footwork, is then off, and all this other stuff. It just breeds bad habits out of quarterbacks, or into quarterbacks, I should say, when they cannot rely on their offensive line in these crucial beginnings of their NFL careers. And so this is an absolutely opportunity for the Broncos offensive line to get right again against a Bucs defensive front that is extremely hurt. Although judging from that game in Detroit, it doesn't seem to matter. You talk about simulated pressures, and you talk about some creative blitz packages and all that kind of stuff. That is synonymous with Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles is going to figure out a way to get to Bo Nix, whether or not that deals with the defensive front, whether or not that even results in sacks. He is going to disrupt a young quarterback. And the narrative that the Bucs make all-stars or all-pros out of rookie quarterbacks is gone by the wayside since Todd Bowles took over as head coach. And he has been able to do, I mean, you saw what he did with Jaden Daniels in week 1. He is going to go after Bo Nix, whether that is up front or even on the back end, and trying to force Bo Nix into some really bad situations and force him into some bad decisions.
My plus factor in this one, and I don't know, well, I guess I do think that he's going to be a plus factor, but it's more of just a recognition. Jordan Whitehead, the way that he has been playing, certainly this year, reuniting with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think he's a very underrated player on this defense because everybody mentions Levante David, Vita Vea, even Kalijah Cansey. Talk about Antoine Winfield Jr., Jamel Dean. Nobody really talks about Jordan Whitehead. And Jordan Whitehead, even when he was in Tampa the first time, was an integral part of that safety rotation they had with him and Winfield Jr. as well as Mike Edwards. And, he goes to the Jets. He just he was not able to play as well. And I just think that it was, I'm going to be honest, like away from home, if you will, away from being in the Todd Bowles defense and with Antoine Winfield Jr. And now he is back in Tampa and Winfield Jr. goes down. And I think everybody went, oh boy, what's going to happen in Tampa secondary now, right? This is an all-pro type of player for you, a guy who was worthy of Defensive Player of the Year last year. It's tough for any team to miss a player like that, especially one that emphasizes him the way that Tampa does. Well, Jordan Whitehead showed up in a huge way last week against the Detroit Lions. He was a middle-of-the-field enforcer. He was the sheriff out there. He was the safety sheriff. And he, like any route that was coming over the middle, a deep crosser, a dig, something, he was quick to trigger on it. If the guy was making the catch, he was right there to put his shoulder on him. But he was even getting towards those zones to where Jared Goff didn't want to even throw that football. So the way that Jordan Whitehead played last week versus Detroit, big time hat tip to him. 82 snaps, which is tied for the most of any Buccaneer last week. 74.4 grade. So just an excellent job from him. And as long as Winfield is out, he is going to have a lot on his plate, and he showed against a really good offense and a tough opponent that he's not going to back down from that challenge. The Chargers at the Steelers is the next game I want to get to. Matchup that matters. What do we got here, Carmen?
Yeah, I've got the Chargers offensive line versus the Pittsburgh defensive line because
one of us had to say it. One of us had
to say it. Shocker of shockers. And it's not even from the sense, obviously, of pass blocking, where the Chargers are running the ball at a top 5 clip in the league. And I don't think that surprises, obviously, anybody. They have Jim Harbaugh. And this is exactly what his scheme has been in college. It was what it was when he was in the NFL prior to that. This team needs to run the ball. And that is going to depend on what the offensive line can do and how they can match up against a Pittsburgh defensive line that is really good. And this is Pittsburgh's calling card. There we go. They're a defensive first team, than they have been, and that's why they haven't had a losing season under Mike Tomlin. So how effective can this offensive line be? Can they still allow for the run game? Can they also keep Justin Herbert clean for those passing situations? Because when Herbert has been kept clean this season, he is 25 of 36, 227 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 11 completions, gaining a first down. So he's excellent. And he's not even the focal point of this offense. But if this Pittsburgh defensive line is able to stop the run a little bit more, then you're going to start to need to throw the ball. And that also depends on the offensive line to keep Justin Herbert clean. So Steelers 52.2% pass rush win rate, 6th best in the NFL. Leading in pressures, not TJ Watt though, Cam Hayward leading in pressures. Give one up for the old guy who happens to be my age.
Yeah, dude, Cam Hayward's awesome. He's just been such an incredible pro throughout his entire time when he's been with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if anybody's going to continue to succeed to play at that position at an older age, Cam Hayward is one of those guys in the league that you believe can do so.
And I am
so excited to see.
Good dude.
I am so excited to see TJ Watt versus Joe Walt, because he's going to get Joe Walt most of the game with TJ Watt rushing from that left side of the defense, right side of the offense. And so, Alt was able to play against Max Crosby very, very well. And I think everybody was very quick to recognize that as a big time win for him. But, to get Max Crosby and then TJ Watt for 2 out of the first 3 games of your NFL career, that's one of a hell of a baptism by fire. So I'm looking forward to see how he holds up, because he's done well so far, but this will, without question, be his toughest test here. A matchup that matters is just, I think it's the Steelers offense versus the Chargers defense, but it's more so about, can the Steelers get some more explosives than what we have seen through the first 2 weeks of the season? Now, I understand Russell Wilson gets hurt, Justin Fields comes in. It was going to be a little bit of all right, let's kind of just see what we could do here. Let's run the ball a little bit. Justin, we don't want you to have to push the ball down the field too far. But Fields looks confident. He really does. I think that he's playing really, really well. I could just blend this in. This is my plus factor as well. Fields, better passing grade, 79 or 72.9, than a rushing game grade right now, 59.0 throughout the first 2 weeks. I think that anytime that people look at Justin Fields and they think he's just a runner, that's not the case this year. Adjusted completion percentage, big time throw rate, turnover worthy play rate, all at career bests right now, 2 weeks in with his time with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And his best throw of the season didn't even count. It was called back. It was that roll out to the right, bomb to George Pickens that was just a beauty. And it just, when I saw that throw, I went, okay, this dude is playing with confidence. I think we can open it up a little bit more here with Justin Fields. But when you look at the Steelers offense overall and some of the lack of explosiveness, 4.8 touchdown percentage when it comes to drives ending in a touchdown, just 1 out of 21, which is 4th worst in the NFL. 6th in total completions of 15 yards or more, or at 6th least, I should say, and 3rd least in total completion percentage of 15 yards or more. So this is a team that they're leaving a lot on the bone. Now they're winning football games, so you don't want to take away with how they're doing it. But from what I saw with Justin Fields, I think you can open it up a little bit with him a little more here in this game. And so I would love to see it. I really would. So that's my matchup that matters. That's my plus factor there. Who is your plus factor here in this game?
Yeah, going along with, obviously, Jim Harbaugh's scheme, it's going to be J.K. Dobbins. And this is a guy that I am so happy for, because so far, knock on all of the wood, he's healthy finally. And he's really he's a guy that I thought had a case for a breakout candidate, being a breakout candidate this year, just given the scheme that he's in and the fact that he does have Gus Edwards too. So you've got this tandem in the backfield for LA that you can rely on for the workload that they are inevitably going to get under Jim Harbaugh. The Chargers rushing stats, no surprise here, but they are 2nd in the league in rushing yards, 395 yards, 71 carries, which ranks 6th. They have 2 rushing touchdowns of 10 or more yards, which is tied for first. And they are getting these, we talk about explosive plays. They are getting explosive plays even on the ground. So that's a calling card of this offense. I think J.K. Dobbins is going to have to just be himself against the Steelers defense, which isn't going to be easy. And that's where this game is going to be won or lost.
I think that Justin Herbert's also a big factor in this one, right? Because the ankle injury, didn't miss a snap because of the ankle injury, but he missed practice, I believe on Wednesday because of it. And so it's just something to monitor, right? I think clearly it's shaping up that he's going to play in this game, but how mobile can he be? It's a good Steelers defensive line, right? That goes into your matchup that matters there. A less mobile Herbert only puts more on the plate of the Chargers offensive line against an already tough task with the Steelers defensive line. So I wanted to mention that because I think that's a factor certainly for this game and how it's going to play out. Panthers, new quarterback, going cross country to take on the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders coming off an upset win against the Baltimore Ravens. And the Panthers now are starting Andy Dalton after benching Bryce Young in this game. Carmen, with a new quarterback here for the Panthers, what is your matchup that matters?
Yeah, I am not going to take the obvious one. I don't know if you did, but Carolina defensive line
for the plus factor. I did. Now I realize now that we both took the same plus factor.
That for the plus factor.
We will get to that. We will get to that.
No, I'm going to go this Carolina D-line against the Las Vegas O-line because the Panthers D-line, they're without Derek Brown, their best player perhaps on the team. And can they get to Gardner Minshew? Should there be more blitzes? Do you need to get more different guys involved rather than on the D-line? They ranked last in pressures with 10 through week 2. And there has only been 4 pressures generated by the D-line on 3rd and 4th down. So that's dead last in the league. And that is, again, crucial when it comes to opposing offenses sustaining drives against you, not getting off the field. It demoralizes the team when you give up even 3rd and 4th downs, especially when they're longer downs. I was really struggling with this one, Trev, because I was just like, oh God, what? The Raiders are coming off this big win against the Ravens. They look to be a better team than we all thought we're all going to give them credit for. And the Panthers just look like worst case scenario at this point. So I was just like, I don't know. Is there a match that really matters right now?
I think the Panthers, the last I checked, all right. The last I checked, the Panthers are getting 5.5 points in this one.
God.
Give me the Panthers. Give me the Panthers.
The Andy Dalton led
quarterback bump. The backup quarterback bump. It is real. It's real, Carmen. It's going to happen.
Right. All right.
The team's going to be rejuvenated. And honestly, so I do think that the Panthers are going to play better under Andy Dalton. Are they going to be world beaters? I don't know about that. But the offense, Andy Dalton played 1 game last year. He played in week 3 against the Seattle Seahawks. Threw for 380 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. He was excellent in that game. He was. You have a better offensive line this year, and in theory, you got better passing weapons. You got Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette's now in there. You got Jatavian Sanders in the tight end rotation. In theory, it's a better situation than it was last year. So I do have some faith in Dalton to be able to come in and play much better than what we've seen from Bryce over the last 2 weeks. So I think they're going to be a more competent team. And then the matchup that matters here for me, and the reason why I am actually going with Carolina getting points in this game, is because the Raiders' explosiveness has been something of note. And if they can keep it up, I will be extremely impressed, and I will talk about this team differently moving forward. But when you look at it right now, they are 13th in most attempts of 15 yards or more down the field, 12. They're 2nd in completions of 15 yards or more with 9. Panthers have given up the 8th most completions of 15 yards or more, which is obviously a negative here and could go into that. But this Raiders offense is throwing the ball deep down the field, even in the intermediate areas where a lot of other teams aren't. Right, we're seeing explosives and we're seeing passing yards down across the league. There's a lot of reasons for
Luke
that.
Getsy become Bruce Arians?
Or maybe Minshew just listens to the play and he goes, "No, we're not doing that.
No, we're just doing
No,
that.
we're
We're
not
just
doing
going to
that.
throw it down the
We're
field.
verse."
Devontae down there somewhere.
And the thing is that if they keep that up, because they were able to do that certainly against the Ravens in the second half last week, because both of their drives that had both of Minshew's big time throws ended in points. One ended in a touchdown, one ended in a field goal. So if they can keep that up and still be an explosive passing offense, then all of a sudden I go, okay, this might be something that we can expect from this team every now and then throughout the season. But if the Raiders don't remain that level of explosive in the passing game, well, there's not really a high floor for them elsewhere, because this team has the least amount of rushing yards in the NFL through 2 weeks at just 100 yards total. So if all of a sudden a handful of these 15-yard passes don't get completed, you start punting a lot more. You're getting off the field. You're not scoring points. And if the Panthers can certainly raise their ceiling with Andy Dalton's play, I don't know if the Panthers will win, but I would take the 5.5 points with this team because I think it's genuinely going to be a close game. Maybe I'll come back here with my tail tucked between my legs next week, but I think this is going to be a pretty competitive football game. And if it's not, it's because I got to give a lot more praise to how Gardner Minshew is playing, because Raiders' explosiveness is that matchup that matters. But plus factor for both of us is the same, Andy Dalton. But what do you think about Dalton coming in for this team?
Yeah, you got a point. There is definitely the backup quarterback bump. We've seen it time and again.
Real. It's real.
It's also a really low bar to clear for Andy Dalton. I mean, this is a team that's ranked last in scoring drives, 3 of 24 through week 2, 245 passing yards, last, 148 rushing yards, fourth worst. This is a low bar to clear for Andy Dalton. The 5.5 points is also a low bar to clear. You're basically like, are they not going to get shut out? Great. Okay, they're not going to get shut out. Yeah. I do think that there is going to be an improvement, because you also have seen Andy Dalton's just seen more, and he can probably, you hope, take care of the football. You saw he only had 1 turnover worthy play in that last start. And not take those sacks. He knows better than that. He can throw the ball away, and I think that can go a long way with this offense. But it's also, let's make no mistake, it's not a big bar to clear.
Walt's not happy with me in the chat. Walt's a Raiders fan, and so me saying that this game's going to be closer, and even taking the Panthers plus 5.5, I knew that
the Raiders defense too. I mean, let's give some props to Antonio Pierce here. He's got those
for sure
fired up.
Look, again, look, Walt, if I'm disrespecting the Raiders, I'll come back on here and say that, you know what? I was wrong. I was sleeping, and I'm up now. I see it. Dolphins at Seahawks is the next game that we're going with here. No Tua Tagovailoa in this one. It's not the same. Oh, new quarterback, backup quarterback bump. I don't think it's not the same situation here with the Dolphins. But what do you think the matchup that matters is? Right.
Yeah. It's the Seahawks DBs against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, provided that, again, Skylar Thompson can get them. I think Skylar Thompson is the obvious one here, but I'm saving that for my plus factor. It's if he can get the ball to his receivers, who Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are not hard to get the ball to. What happens with those Seahawks DBs who are also playing extraordinarily well? The Seahawks have 2 of PFF's top 11 graded cornerbacks. Tyreek Woolen, Devin Witherspoon. I love Devin Witherspoon. He was one of my little draft crushes, not to mention he's an Illinois guy. And I didn't go to U of I, but it's just, you just like to see when these guys kind of come into the league, because it doesn't happen very often. And these are guys that are they're a wonderful tandem. They're going to try and keep a lid on Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Hill on targets of 10 plus yards downfield, which I'm not even sure he has any other kind of targets. 8 targets, 2 catches though for 101 yards. So not a lot of catches, still a lot of production. I also expect that to go up, 2 catches gaining a first down. So that's that should go up again with Skylar Thompson. This is kind of an iffy thing, but I do expect that this Seattle secondary, which is doing so incredibly well under Mike McDonald, is going to be a really, really tough test, and is going to do some different things. And just the athleticism of those 2 guys that I mentioned before, it's going to be really tough to diagnose exactly what coverages they're in and everything like that. And just on top of that, they hit hard. So
Right. They do.
see.
No, the whole team's flying. There's no doubt about
Yeah.
it. And the thing about Mike McDonald, he's a smart dude, but I think more importantly, like he's not a stubborn dude. So
Hmm.
it's not just this like, hey, you got to run like whatever I'm telling you to run. This is how we do it. It's going to work against every single opponent. I think McDonald showed last year in how versatile he was willing to be against or with Kyle Hamilton every single week is like, hey, you have to play different teams differently. You can't just be like,
Hmm.
no, I mean, we are a this kind of team. It's got to be different every single week, or the good offense is going to figure you out. I can't wait to see what he has in store for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle because there's just not a lot of defenses that can even slow these guys down, let alone handle them. And I think that the Seahawks have the team speed and the tenacity and the confidence to be able to go up against the two of the best wide receivers that we have in the game. And so I'm just really looking forward to seeing what McDonald does. That'll be a fascinating film review a week from now. My matchup that matters. You see Dolphins offensive line versus Seattle's defensive line. Seattle's defensive line playing very, very well. Boye Mafe, Byron Murphy II, Leonard Williams, all of them with pass rush grades above 70. They're able to attack all sorts of different areas of the defensive line, whether the guards can be weak, the center might be weak, the offensive tackles might be weak. These guys can align in a lot of different spots. And wherever you're weakest, I think they're going to be able to emphasize hitting you the hardest there. And for the Dolphins, I'm worried about Austin Jackson, their right tackle. 56.1 pass blocking grade through 2 weeks. The first week was good. It was really good. It was one of Austin Jackson's best single game performances, I think, that we have seen from him over the last couple of years. I think it was an 82.1 pass blocking grade, something around that. I was really impressed. Last week against the Bills, not so much. Von Miller basically cooked him. It was a 28.6 pass blocking grade, and he gave up 7 pressures. So complete opposite. Which one's the real Austin Jackson? Can the real Austin Jackson please stand up versus the Seattle Seahawks here? Boye Mafe's been playing pretty well, and obviously he'll get a matchup that I think he has the ability to get the upper hand on. Can he? I think this will be a nice barometer game for Boye Mafe as well. So how this underrated, I think, Seattle defensive line, because it's been a weaker unit on the team over the last 2 to 3 years, and I don't know if we were ready for the jump that it looks like they have made through the first 2 weeks. So them going up against the Dolphins offensive line is going to matter a lot in this one. What's your plus factor for this game?
Yeah, it's the obvious one. It's Skylar Thompson from Miami. And it's, can he keep up what the Dolphins started through the first 2 weeks of the season with Tua, which is going to be no easy task. I mean, these are the guys that they've been explosive, 30 plays gaining 10 or more yards, which is tied for third in the NFL. And that only happens if you can throw the ball and throw the ball often, because they haven't been able to get the run game going up until this point. They have no rushes gaining 20 or more yards so far this season, 220 rushing yards, which is 21st in the league. Either the run game is going to have to step up, or Skylar Thompson is going to have to be the one to continue what Mike McDonald and this offense started. And again, not going to be easy.
Right. No, there's no doubt about it. And I think somebody that they've got to lean on a lot is Devon Achane. And he's my plus factor in this one. I think we talk about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and for good reason. You highlighted him as a matchup that matters, and I definitely believe that. But Achane's been, I don't want to say bottled up, because I think he has a decent amount of 10-yard runs, but like those crazy runs, like the 20+ yard runs, the things that we saw from the Dolphins run game last year, the just total takeover, difference making, explosive runs, they're not present in the game right now. And it's tough to like predict or build around those, because that's just often special football players doing special things. But Achane has special playmaking ability. And so I think that you've got to lean on that more, and hopefully that with more carries and more touches, he continues to be a very efficient and explosive back for you. So with an increased workload now, with the ball not into his hands nearly as much because he's not out there, I think that's going to mean a lot to how explosive this offense can remain. So I think that he is the big plus factor in this one, if he can continue to be that type of a back with his speed as a weapon. The Baltimore Ravens getting into, well, I was going to say getting into the 4 p.m. games, but we're already into the 4 p.m. games. I didn't even realize that. The 4:25 games, I should say. Ravens at Cowboys. What is the matchup that matters here, Carmen?
Yeah, well, there is a rookie at center for the Dallas Cowboys and Cooper Beebe, and he is going to be going up
Mm-hmm.
against head to head with Nnamdi Madubuike, not only head to head in the physical sense, where they are going to be lined up across from each other, and that's going to be, I think you could argue that Nnamdi Madubuike has been the best part of Baltimore's defense so far this season. You've got Kyle Hamilton, obviously, too, who I absolutely love, but Madubuike has been certainly the guy that matters the most in the Baltimore pass rush. But not only from a physical sense are they going head to head, but I'm doing the head to head mental side of things
I see what you did
because
there. Nice.
I
Nice.
know. I don't know how much is put on Cooper Beebe given that he is a rookie, but usually centers are the ones that set protections. They are the ones that can kind of move the offensive line and make identifications as to how many down linemen they're facing, where their protection needs to be set to, all that kind of stuff. I do think that with a veteran like Dak Prescott, he probably takes on a lot of that responsibility given that he can and he's seen everything. But it's going to be this chess match between Cooper Beebe and the Baltimore defensive front because we know they like to mix up their defensive line. We know they like, their stunts and to move these guys around a little bit on the interior. How is that going? How is Dak going to account for that? And by extension, how is Cooper Beebe going to account for that? Because there are definitely going to be things where they're going to try to confuse him. They're going to try to confuse this Dallas offense. And can both of those guys keep up? So a rookie is starting at center. I think Dallas is one of the few teams that can get away with it, given the fact they do have Dak Prescott now on his third contract with the team. But it still doesn't mean that there isn't going to be an effort to try and confuse these guys. And it doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
You love to see that Madubuike is continuing to be the centerpiece of that defense and that defensive line after the big contract, right? I feel like sometimes the worry is like, okay, am I paying
Guy gets
for
paid.
something that you have, right. and not even like the guy gets paid and like he kind of like mails it in, but even if he doesn't mail it in, you always have to wonder, am I paying you for something that you've already done? Like, am I paying you because you were already good for me and not necessarily that you're going to continue to be good for me? And Madubuike is showing that even though the ink is dry, he is going to continue to be good for them, which I think is very, very important. Ravens run game versus the Dallas run defense. We know that the Ravens want to run the football, and they've been good at it. Our head researcher slash, communications director, everything, Dave Salfaro pointed this out. Like, the Ravens are good at running the football this year. They're not great. It's not like they're top 3 in every single category. They are 7th in total rushing yards at 336. They are 14th in missed tackles forced on runs, which, goes into the effectiveness of how well that you could run the football in any situation. 209 yards after contact, gets back into the top 10, but it's just 8th. 9 on rushes of 10 yards or more. That's also tied for 8th. So again, like, we're top 10 in some areas. We're good. We're a good rushing team right now. They're looking to take that step into being a great rushing team, being one of the best in the NFL, that part of their game being feared, which it has been at times over the last 4 or 5 years. This is an opportunity for them, if they're going to be a great run team this season, to show it, because the Cowboys run defense, 34.0, which is the lowest run defense grade as a team. That's 32nd in the NFL. In EPA per rush, they are bottom 5. In average depth of tackle, they are bottom 10. So this is just a ripe matchup for the Ravens to, you would think, impose their will, what they want to be on offense. This is the game to show it. And if you are going to go from a good rushing attack to a great rushing attack against the Cowboys, even on the road, is the team to do it against for how poorly they have played in that category over the last couple of weeks. So that'll be interesting to see if, the Ravens can take that next step, or on the flip side, does Dallas take that next step? Do they play better on the run defense side of things than they have yet this season? So we will certainly see. What about your plus factor in this one, Carmen?
My plus factor seems obvious when you first say it because it's Micah Parsons. And outside of the pass rushing, god that we've seen so far this year, he's in a contract year. He's got everything to prove. This season among edge defenders, he's ranked in the top 10. But going a little bit deeper on this, there's something that was very interesting that defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer said in Dallas. And so the way that the Cowboys kind of tried to attack the Browns in the season opener was they had a quarterback spy, and they used Marvion Overshown to do that. Now Zimmer was asked, are you going to do that again with a guy like Lamar Jackson, who is a run threat? And he said, we might have Micah Parsons do it. He's pretty athletic and fast. So who is going to be the guy that ends up spying Lamar? Going even deeper on this, do you need a spy with Lamar Jackson? Which at first sounds crazy. I get it. And, he's always a threat to scramble, all that. But we have not seen Lamar Jackson on as many designed runs as I think I was expecting. I don't know if you were expecting. When the Ravens got Derrick Henry, I was like, oh boy, here we go. Because not only do you have this Mack truck of a player in Derrick Henry, but you also now you have a two-headed backfield, one of which is the quarterback. Now, the Ravens have not. Lamar Jackson has been running it on a design run 7.2% of the time, which is still ranked fourth among quarterbacks. But there just aren't that many quarterbacks that have the skill set that Lamar Jackson has. Why they aren't exploiting it even more is kind of where I'm confused. Because I really did think that, is it because Lamar Jackson doesn't want to run? Is he still trying to prove that he's a passer in this league? I would think after his second MVP, he has nothing left to prove in that regard, and nor should he. Is he afraid of getting hurt? Is it one of those things where they paid him a whole bunch of money and they don't want to risk him getting hurt? I don't know the answer to that, but I do think that there is so much more room for this Ravens offense to exploit the fact that they have both Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, and both of those guys being threats to an opposing defenses that are not built to contend with two runners like that, especially when one is your quarterback. So I'm interested to see how much they try to use Lamar Jackson on design runs, and if then the Dallas Cowboys feel like, from what they've seen through 2 weeks of the season, do they even need to have this spy, and who that is? Can you just stick with Micah Parsons maybe, or is it Marvion Overshown, or do you just treat Lamar Jackson like any old quarterback? I don't know the answer. That's why I think this is good.
No, I think that's a really great call out by you. I think in all facets of it, I am curious with the Overshown point in particular, because he looked awesome sort of in that spiral against Cleveland, and obviously, like, Deshaun Watson's nowhere near the rushing threat that Lamar Jackson is. But I remember there was a play in week 1 where Watson's rolling to his right to the outside, and he sort of gets to the sideline, and it's basically like, hey, I got to find a receiver to throw it to. Okay, here's a Cowboys defender. It was DeMarvion Overshown. He's sort of coming to me. All right, I've got time. Let me look at my receiver. Oh God, he's on me. And it's just like, and immediately he just like tackled him. And it's just that closing speed from Overshown, who is, at Texas, he was that safety linebacker hybrid type of defender.
Star player,
so much speed and length. So I think it's a really great call out by you with whether or not it could be Parsons, whether or not it could be Overshown, or it could be one guy 1 second, one guy the other, and then what that does for the rest of the defense. That's a really good, talking point. I can't wait to see kind of how it plays out for this game. No doubt about it. My plus factor, I'll go with an obvious one. Dak Prescott here for the Cowboys. He just has not been the same quarterback that we saw last season. When we talk about living up to contracts and him signing that contract there, not that he can't. Everybody calm down. He just has not been as good as he was last year. 54.6 PFF grade this season. That's 26 in the NFL amongst quarterbacks on throws of 10 or more yards down the field, which is the area where he really needs to get better. 10 of 26, just 238 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So just simply put, he has not looked like the Dak Prescott that we saw last season, which, okay, he played an MVP level last year. He was incredible with what he was able to do. And even though he's not, the expectation that he would exactly replicate that, okay, maybe that's unrealistic, but close to it. I mean, he's got to be able to play better than what we've seen through the first 2 weeks. But after all, it is just 2 weeks. So we'll see what he's able to do here. The San Francisco 49ers against the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah.
It sucks, honestly, like, just because this game is nothing on paper
that we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, with everyone hurt. So matchup that matters here. What do you think, Carmen?
Yeah, it's going to be that Rams offensive line against the Niners defensive line, because there are so many injuries along the offensive line. The Rams lead the league already in pressures allowed with 35. That's not great for an aging quarterback either in Matthew Stafford. They have a 26.1 PFF pass blocking grade, which is ranked 31st. And the Rams ranked 31st in the NFL with 135 rushing yards. So there are no answers, is what I'm trying to get to, with the Los Angeles Rams offense, specifically the offensive line. They cannot run block. They cannot pass block. Matthew Stafford is out there alone. And that is just, and for a guy that's not mobile, that's a problem. You also have your top two receivers hurt. There's so many question marks. There are so many concerns with the Los Angeles Rams right now, and just no answers. And I think that is going to manifest in, or like the most important matchup there then is again, that defensive line, and how in the world do you keep Matthew Stafford from getting hurt? Essentially.
Yeah. They're bad at pass blocking. They're bad at run blocking. Oh, well, when you put it that way, yeah, I guess that it doesn't really help. The matchup that matters to me, Rams wide receivers versus Niners secondary, simply from somebody's got to step up, right? Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, both those guys are down. Demarcus Robinson so far this season, 86.3 receiving grade. Tyler Johnson, 66.6. Tutu Atwell, 69.6. Colby Parkinson also in the mix as a tight end, but his receiving grade, I believe, was 57.1 when I looked it up. It kind of just comes down to somebody's got to be able to step up. And I think the plus factor in this one, just getting right to it, is it has to be Matthew Stafford, because he played at a great level last season. Matthew Stafford had one of the best years of his career, which is really saying something, because I think he has had a fantastic career, but he just played at such a high level. He was able to push the ball the way that they needed to, higher big time throw percentage, but still a low turnover worthy play percentage. Just really great play for him. Ended up with a passing grade around the mid 80s, which is a very solid for a year long sample size. So it's just going to all kind of come on his shoulders. And is that fair? No, but I don't know who else does it for this Rams offense. I really don't. And it's just so many injuries up front, so many injuries in the receiving room that again, it's unfair to ask of him to do as much as he's going to need to do to keep this team competitive, but he is the plus factor. He's the only one who's going to be able to do it, and he's talented enough to do it, but still, it's a tough task for him. So that's my matchup that matters. Those are the plus factors for me. What do you got for plus factor in this game?
Plus factor, I put Tyler Johnson. I didn't necessarily throw a dart at a board of the receivers that were still left, but Tyler Johnson is a bigger body. We saw him with the Buccaneers, who drafted him, that he was kind of used in some more of those underneath routes, some of those more short to intermediate yardage routes. That is something that Stafford is going to need to live in. On throws of 2.5 seconds or quicker, he's 26 of 36, 204 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. This is Matt Stafford's only answer, because the offensive line is not going to be able to block for him. He needs to get the ball out quickly, and he needs to have guys that he can get the ball out quickly too. So I'm hoping that Tyler Johnson provides to be one of those guys, given the fact that he has a bigger frame. He can hold up to some of these hits that he's going to take underneath. And Matthew Stafford, quite honestly, is just going to have to get the ball out really fast in order to avoid getting hit.
Yeah. In a matchup that matters, I wanted to go with Jared Verse, because Jared Verse is playing really, really well, but it's like,
is it going to matter?
He's going to go up against Trent Williams too. So it's like, do I really feel what's he going to what Jared Verse going to get the better of Trent Williams enough for it to matter in this matchup? No.
Yeah, no.
But I do think that's going to be fun, because Verse has been playing really well to start the season, and it's a great test getting to go up against one of the best left tackles in the NFL in Trent Williams. So maybe not a matchup that matters, but a fun one that I think everybody should be paying attention to if you're watching this game. Last game of the late afternoon slate here on Sunday. This is going to be a fun one. Lions at Cardinals. Cardinals could very well be 2-0 on the season. Ended up having a big lead against Buffalo in Buffalo, and really just let them come back in that one. All due respect to Buffalo. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but trying to give the Cardinals a little bit of praise here. What is your matchup that matters heading into this game?
Well, after last week, it's got to be Aiden Hutchinson versus the Arizona offensive line. Hutch just took advantage of a backup that was in there and just manhandled him on against the Bucs.
Yeah.
with Luke Gedeke out. It wasn't pretty, and somehow the Bucs still pulled it off. Baker did not get rattled. He deserves a ton of credit for that, but good God, look at Aiden Hutchinson's numbers. 41.2% pass rush win rate, leads the league. 17 pressures, leads the league. 45% pass rush win rate on 3rd and 4th down, which is first among obviously his position group. And I think the stat that matters the most when it comes to him, because he is the one that is killing drives for this Detroit defense. And again, I think it's also a testament to the fact that the Lions brought in DJ Reader. You have DJ Reader and you have Ali McNeil, who has been a consistently underrated player on that interior along the defensive line. Both of those guys are just eating up space. They're getting pressure themselves. And then that is opening things up for Aiden Hutchinson, because you cannot afford to double team him all the time when we have those guys on the interior. You now have James Houston on the opposite side. The Lions look like they're going to have Marcus Davenport, who practiced fully this week. We're going to see. But at the end of the day, this comes down to, can you block Aiden Hutchinson? Can you get in the way? And teams have been able to do it, but it's not easy.
Yeah, it's what I was so impressed with Aiden is the counter spin move that he has.
It's so quick.
It's
so quick.
It's so good. And the Lions, again, I broke this down in a little bit more detail in the Trenches episode when me and Ollie Conley were sort of talking about it and in awe of what Hutchinson's able to do. The Lions align him in more of like this wide 7 type of alignment, even if there's no tight end there. And the reason why is because it gives you more of a straight line path to the quarterback. So it sort of mitigates a little bit of lack of flexibility that Hutchinson might have around the arc. But it also, the underrated part of doing that is, especially if you put a 3 technique defensive tackle to that side of the field and the 3 technique immediately just goes into the guard, that means that the offensive tackle is truly on an island against Hutchinson. And if he's coming from a wider angle, that means he will have more of an opportunity to attack with an inside counter. And so he will come straight at you like a bat out of hell with these crazy, fast, violent hands. And you as an offensive tackle, you're just trying to beat him to the landmark. And then all of a sudden, the second you do, you go, all right, cool, let me get hands on him. And Hutchinson goes, all right, I'm going to the outside. Just kidding. Here's the spin move. And you go, and you're just like left grasping at straws. And look, backup quarterback a backup offensive tackle last week at Justice School that he was going up against. So yeah, it wasn't the toughest of competition, but this week, to your point, him as a game wrecker in a matchup that matters, will go up against Kelvin Beachum or Jonathan Williams. Both those guys have played right tackle Jonah Williams, for the Arizona Cardinals. Is Beachum hurt? Did he get hurt? Did he get benched? I'm not sure, but it's either one of those two guys. Neither of them have graded out well so far this season. Beacham's at a 63.0. Williams is at a 68.8, although Williams has been the better pass blocker through a smaller sample size, just 22 snaps at right tackle. So that is going to be a big-time matchup no matter what, even if you go, oh, he didn't play anybody last week. You watch the film. He could be disruptive against any offensive tackle. So I think that's when you got to watch out for, no doubt about it. My matchup that matters is Kyler Murray, just overall, versus the Lions defense.
Yeah.
Specifically because if Kyler plays the way that he played this past week, Cardinals can beat any team in the NFL. Simply put. And the reason why I believe that is because of how he played outside of structure. Mm-hmm. When Kyler was outside of structure, so I sorted it for passes with an above 3-second time to throw. So that's really like, if you're above 3 seconds, chances are you're not still in the pocket because somebody's going to beat their offensive tackle within 3 seconds. On passes where that time to throw is above 3 seconds, last week he had 2 touchdowns, 3 big time throws, 95.7 passing grade. He was unbelievable in those situations. Now, is it always going to be that good? No, probably not. But that's the magic of Kyler Murray that we saw back in 2021. He was an MVP candidate. And if we're seeing that still now, he can put up points with anybody. I think this game between the Cardinals and the Lions is going to be a shootout. I really do.
Yeah,
I think the Lions have done better at, they've done better at making their defense a little bit better. But unless Hutchinson, like you said, is like truly dominating and getting Kyler Murray on the ground more than a few times in this game, I think there's going to be some fireworks. I think that it could be a, 30 plus scoring performance for whoever wins this game, maybe like a 33-28 final score, something like that. And if Kyler's working the magic that he was working last week outside of the pocket, it's going to be tough to stop him. So that's definitely my matchup that matters. But what's your plus factor in this one?
Yeah, I mean, that puts also just so much stress on the back levels of the defense and this Lions defense. I mean, you're going to have Brian Branch back there, and I think he's going to matter a whole lot when it comes to making sure that you're covering these receivers and blanketing them for longer than 3 seconds, which isn't something that you should be able to do. But on the other side of the ball, Trev, I am so close to really thinking that Jameson Williams is for real this time. I'm so close. I'm so close. Right. I know. I want it to be true. Like, please be clear. I want to be clear here. I want it to be true. I want Jameson Williams to be the guy that they brought him in to be. I want him to be that guy that can just blow the doors off of any defensive back that he goes against, to blow the doors off of this offense in particular, to stretch this offense down the field. And then it opens up so much more for the guys underneath. And it means that Amon-Ra St. Brown isn't doing it all on his own. And then you also have Sam Laporta and you have Jahmyr Gibbs. And like, this would just be the most fun offense under Ben Johnson if this is for real. And Jameson Williams is the Lions leader in receiving yards. He's got 200 of them so far. Second best in the NFL. But all of these have come on explosive plays. It hasn't been a ton of work. It's just come on these gadget kind of explosive plays. But that is all you need from Jameson Williams, because again, you have all those other guys that kind of complete and round out what is an incredibly hard offense to really key in on, because they can go in so many different directions, often with the same players. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, not just a running back. You've got him, get him in space, watch him do his thing. But then you also have David Montgomery, by the way, who's a bowling ball up the middle. And then you have Sam Laporta, who is a serviceable blocker, and then one of the best pass catching tight ends, especially we saw in his rookie year last year, which was absolutely insane. So there's so many different things that this offense could do if you also have the deep threat, and that is Jameson Williams. So is he for real? I think if 2 games, I'm right there. 3 games, and I'm all in. I'm balls to the wall on this.
Yeah, look, it's hard to not watch what he's been able to do for this Lions offense already and not just really want to buy into everything that's possible. I don't think it's come together yet, but I think it absolutely can. We've had people in the chat that are saying that, correctly saying Jonah Williams, he's on IR right now, so he's at least missed 4 games with a knee injury. So it is Kelvin Beachum who's playing at that right tackle spot. So it'll be Beachum versus Aiden Hutchinson for this game. My plus factor in this one is Jared Goff versus the blitz, because we've long talked about who Jared Goff is under pressure, and it hasn't been better this year. We saw last week Bowles, who likes to pressure quite a bit. Bucks, have the most blitzes of any team in the league at 44. They had 22 last week. It gave Jared Goff some fits. He was really, trigger shy, if you will, on making sure that passes were getting where they needed to go when they needed to go there. He was just very hesitant. And I think a blitz was a big reason for that. Cardinals under Jonathan Gannon, 7th most blitzes versus the pass this year at 26. So this is still a team that also blitzes quite a bit. Goff just a 42.5 passing grade against the blitz when he was playing Tampa last week. So this remains an issue for him. If you can pressure him and get him rattled, he does not like that. And in particular, something that was of note, in my opinion, he didn't even really give his guys a chance last week when he was blitzed. Right? There were a couple of opportunities. Like I think about I can't remember what the exact situation of the game was, but there was I don't remember if it was a screen or if it was just a pass to the flat that he had Jahmyr Gibbs there, and there was just an overload blitz, and there were more players in the backfield than Goff was ready for, and he just, boom, threw it in the ground immediately. Like, he's like, okay, that play's dead. We're not going for it. And there's something to that, right? If him and Ben Johnson kind of have an agreement where it's like, hey, let's live to fight another down. We're not going to put the ball in harm's way at all whatsoever. That's just what we do here. Okay, I guess he's just sort of listening to the game plan. But, you got to give your dudes a shot in the NFL. You got to be able to pass the ball to them. You don't want to quite go full Will Levis with it, but you've got to give your guys a chance to make plays, especially when your best playmakers in Jahmyr Gibbs. And I felt like Goff was hesitant to even do that last week. So we'll see if it's a little bit different this week. He should still see plenty of blitzes going up against the Cardinals. So that is a plus factor in this one. If Goff can play a little bit better against the blitz, if he's more confident in his hot reads, all that good stuff. Sunday Night Football. It's the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons hosting this one after going to Philly and getting a big dub there last Monday night against the Eagles. What's the matchup that matters here, Carmen? What do you like about this one?
Yeah, well, again, kind of an obvious thing, but Chris Jones. And Chris Jones versus the Falcons offensive line, who held up beautifully for Kirk Cousins on Monday Night Football against the Eagles. Going into a majority of that game, quarters 1 through 3, actually quarters like 1 through 4.5, Kirk was not mobile, could not move. And that was the biggest concern, after week 1, seeing him barely be able to plant his foot, not getting any torque on the ball. It looked all bad. And this offensive line is being asked to do a whole lot when it comes to Kirk Cousins. And they've so far fared decently well. I don't know if that rings true against somebody like Chris Jones, who is 82.3 PFF grade, which is 4th among interior defensive linemen, 90.1 PFF pass rushing grade, which is 1st among interior defensive linemen, and 13 pressures. It's just, he's a one-man wrecking crew up front there for the Kansas City Chiefs defense. And he's schemed up in different ways. He's moved around the line. Spags knows exactly what to do with him. And also, I think George Karlaftis is coming on even more than he did last year. And he's getting pressure himself too. He's benefiting from teams accounting for Chris Jones. So how do you deal with that, especially when you know that your quarterback is going to sit in the pocket, cannot get himself out of trouble? We didn't even really see any of those play action passes that Kirk Cousins is known so much for, which can mitigate the rush. That hasn't really happened either in Atlanta. So we're going to see. I'm very concerned about that, just given the fact that Chris Jones is so incredibly effective no matter where on the defensive line he is.
Yeah, and it's interesting with him going up against Chris Lidstrom, who's been one of the highest graded interior offensive linemen over the last 2 years, but Lidstrom's really struggling in pass protection this year, 27.7 pass blocking grade. He's given up the most pressures on the team with 8. So you would think that would be a titanic matchup there. And I think that it still can be with how talented both those guys are, but clearly where things are trending, it's going to be a big advantage for Jones. My matchup that matters is Kirk Cousins on non-scripted drives in particular, because when you look, and I'm not saying that he can't improvise, but I'm saying that the Falcons offense right now, in between their scripted drives, which scripted drives, for anybody out there that's listening that doesn't know, when you go into a game, normally your first drive is scripted, if you will. They run through all of the plays that they're probably going to run, depending on how long the drive is. They go through all those plays like through walkthrough, through the week of practice. Like it is a scripted drive. They know the team that they're going up against. Sure, I guess if they're playing things a little bit differently, some of the plays might change or the order of the plays might change. But a lot of those plays that you run for the first drive and for the first drive of the first half and for the first drive of the second half, as well as your 2-minute drills.
2-minute drills.
2-minute drill. Yeah, your 2-minute drill, heading it out into the last 2 minutes of the first half. And then of course, the last drive, if you have a 2-minute drill at the ending part of the game. If you look at just those 4 drives, so first drive of the first half, last drive of the first half, first drive of the second half, last drive of the second half, Kirk Cousins, 81.4 passing grade on those scripted drives against Philadelphia in particular. On the non-scripted drives, 61.4 passing grade. And that's not always to say like, oh, Kirk can't make it happen outside of the scripted plays. Sometimes, you just don't have a great chemistry, where the ball's lined up. You're not calling the right plays for where you're at. Like, there's just not a lot of chemistry there. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong. But I want to see more life from the Falcons offense when things aren't as easy as being scripted. Because that 2-minute drill against the Eagles, it couldn't have looked easier. It could not have looked easier. Zach Robinson absolutely cooked like a Michelin star chef as the offensive coordinator and play caller, and Kirk Cousins executed things to perfection. So how does that look now in the in-between? I think that's a really important part of whether or not the Falcons can keep up with the Kansas City Chiefs. Who's your plus factor in this game?
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna the improvisation that they can do. I mean, it's limited by Kirk's Achilles injury still, but it's also limited because this is a new offense for him. So maybe as he gets more comfortable, we're going to start seeing some more improvisation and just, you know, a little bit more comfort on Kirk's level to make checks at the line, to check into different things. But I do think that a huge part of this has to rest on Bijan Robinson's shoulders, and that, or maybe his legs, is probably the better way to say that, as my plus factor. Leo Chenal for the Kansas City Chiefs, linebacker, has had is excellent versus running backs, highest grade on Kansas City against running backs. Between him, Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie, can they contain Bijan Robinson and everything that he is able to do? Whether that's run the football, whether that's catch a pass out of the backfield, whether that's catch a pass down the sideline. I think that Kansas City is going to try and force Kirk Cousins to have to throw the ball and throw it often. At least that's what I would do. And then make that offensive line have to hold up, because for as much as they've been serviceable for Kirk Cousins and have he's avoided getting sacked too many times, they also just aren't grade wise looking good in pass protection or pass blocking. So that's something that you can kind of take advantage of if you force this Atlanta Falcons offense to pass the ball. But if Bijan Robinson can get going, I think that, that's going to do wonders for this offense. It's going to unlock a lot of things. And just more specifically, Bijan Robinson it has to be their most productive player, because I just don't trust Kirk Cousins, like you said, for the majority of the game. And that's, a testament to he's not confident yet, whether that's because it's a new scheme or his injury. You have to lean on Bijan's shoulders.
Yeah, I think that Leo Chenal, you brought him up. He is my plus factor in this one, and you talked about how great he is versus running backs and the factor that he could be there, but just overall the versatility that this guy has. 82 snaps overall this season, 87.5 overall overall PFF grade, excuse me, 85.0 run defense grade, 68.9 passing grade. He's had 37 snaps on the defensive line, 40 as an off-ball linebacker, and then even 5 in the slot. They will use him everywhere. They will line him up as a stand-up linebacker right in front of the A gap to try to, scare the defensive lineman that he's coming, because he's got the strength to be able to do it. He's a huge plus factor on this defense, somebody who is an unsung hero that does not get enough praise. And Steve Spagnuolo is using him in all of his talents, I think, to a maximum level. So you love to see it. I think he could definitely be a plus factor in this game, especially with how they're going to attack this Falcons offensive line. We got 2 Monday night games here this week.
I know.
First one, Jacksonville Jaguars traveling to the Buffalo Bills. What's the matchup that matters here, Carmen?
Yeah, well, still, I think James Cook versus this Jacksonville defense. James Cook is becoming so reliable, for this Buffalo offense. And I think that we all thought that was going to be the case coming into the season, given the receiving weapons that Josh Allen lost. And not to say that Josh Allen isn't doing a great job of kind of elevating the team around him, because I think he is. And I think we can put to rest, is Josh Allen a top 3, top 5 quarterback? I don't think that there's a question at this point. But that doesn't mean that you don't need to rely on other aspects of your offense. And James Cook, between his pass catching ability and just his straight run ability, is become a really integral part of this offense. And I really, 149 rushing yards, 9 rushes, gaining a first down. So that's the biggest thing, is James Cook is the one moving the chains for you. And you need to continue to do that. He's got 4 catches on 4 targets, I should say, 49 yards and a touchdown through the air as well. He is such a versatile piece. He is someone, again, that Buffalo relies very, very heavily on. And I think that's going to continue. So how does Jacksonville decide to contend with that? Because that requires a couple different guys. It's not just the defensive line up against a running back. It's the linebackers. It's perhaps the safeties coming down and making sure that he's not as much of a receiving threat as he has been through 2 weeks of the season. But I absolutely see that continuing.
My matchup that matters is how the Jags play on third down, because we highlighted this in the grades release show that we did on Monday, but just nothing in the Jags offense looks easy. And the problem is that it feels like it's something different every week. Either it's, oh, they can't pass the ball past 10 yards. Oh, they won't pass the ball fewer than 10 yards. Oh, they can't run the ball a certain way. Oh, they can't run the ball a certain way, but they can't do this. Oh, the blocking is one side of the offensive line was bad this week. Oh, this side of the offensive line was bad this week. It's always something with Jacksonville. And that makes it very frustrating because in the in-between, you say to yourself, we have guys that we love. Like, we have guys that we know can get it done. They just haven't gotten it done all together. They're such a streaky team, specifically when it comes to converting on third down. This team was not great at converting a third down last year. And this year, they're only converting on third down 26.3% of the time. That's 28th in the league. And they're going up against a Buffalo Bills team that is giving up third down conversions at a coin flips rate of 50%. That's 27th in the NFL. So this is your chance. This is your chance to be better on third down, to have more sustained drives, to get points. Like, I understand that you're on the road. It's a tough test here, but you've got to be better on third down. It's got to come down. It's got to come together in the downs and the moments that matter most. And for Jacksonville, that just has not happened really over the last half of last season going into this season. They're 1-7 in their last 8 games.
Yeah.
They're 1-7 in the last 8 games. It's yeah, and it's so, like, man, it's just so disappointing. But you got to look at Doug Peterson, you got to look at Press Taylor, the offensive coordinator, and you got to say, hey, it's got to be your best work here, especially when it comes to third down conversions. And if it's not, I don't know where the get right game is going to be for them. So it's going to be tough. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but that aspect of their offense, to me, needs to look good this game. So that's the matchup that matters. What about plus factor for you? Who you got?
Yeah, I mean, on the opposite side of the coin, the Jacksonville defense needs to be good on crucial downs, just in general. So you look at Josh Allen, who has been very, very good on third and fourth down through 3 games. He's got an 82.1 PFF grade on third and fourth down. That ranks 7th among quarterbacks. And then you also have he's 8 of 14, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 big time throws, which is tied for first, again, on third and fourth down. So Jacksonville's defense needs to clamp down on third and fourth down on top of this red zone situations and situations in the red area, because again, that's somewhere where the Bills have excelled this season so far, 6 of 9 in their 66.7%, I should say, tied for 4th in red zone percentage. So that is something that, again, the Jacksonville defense, it can be so demoralizing when you give up those third and fourth downs, when you give up those red zone scores for the entire team, and that, spills over into the offense having to catch up, and you probably getting down at that point. So the Jacksonville defense, specifically on crucial downs, you're going to need to clamp down.
I would agree. My plus factor here, Von Miller. I talked about him a little bit when we talked about Miami's offensive tackles. Renaissance game, last game, it was incredible versus Miami. 88.0 pass rushing grade. That was his highest single game pass rush grade since the 2021 playoffs when he was with the Los Angeles Rams. He had a sack, he had 4 pressures, he had a 22.7 pass rush win percentage. And this week he's got another juicy matchup. Anton Harrison, who I think could be a good offensive tackle in this league. Yeah. Struggling a little bit.
Young. He's young.
36.3 pass blocking grade. He is their right tackle, and that's the player that Von Miller is going to go up against. So if they're not going to have him on a pitch count with him being a little bit older, if they're going to kind of let him pin his ears back and just get after the quarterback still like they did last week and back-to-back weeks, I think we could be in for another Von Miller game where he's able to be a big difference maker for this team. So Von Miller is my plus factor here for this one. Last game that we're talking about, last game of the week, Commanders at Bengals. It is the late Monday Night Football game. So the first one starts at 7:30 Eastern. This one starts at 8:15 Eastern. So staggering a little bit there. Both these games better somehow not be like at halftime at the same time, or I'm going to be mad. What's your matchup that matters here for this game?
Trey Hendrickson specifically, because I want to give this man shine whenever I can, given the fact he is not talked about enough when we talk about elite pass rushers. Versus the Washington O-line, who pass blocking grade 16th, run blocking grade 18th. That's, again, with a rookie quarterback, you need to, it's fine. It's average. But when you're going against some of these guys like Trey Hendrickson, like some of these more elite pass rushers, that's a concern when you have a young quarterback behind you. So also the fact that this offensive line is presumably responsible for setting protections and doing things to take things off of Jaden Daniels' plate. With the way that Lou Anarumo loves to kind of mix and match certain things along that defensive front in the front seven in general. Trey Hendrickson is going to be given as many good matchups and exploit as many matchups as he possibly can. So look out for him. He is leading the Bengals right now in pressures with 12.
Yeah, he is a major piece of every single thing that they do on the defense side of the ball. It absolutely starts with Trey Hendrickson. So there's no doubt about it. He could be a matchup that matters every single week, and you would be right to point him out and give him his praise. I'm going to talk about the Washington pass game versus the Bengals pass defense. And it's, when I was doing some research for this one, it's interesting because Washington's pass game specifically with Cliff Kingsbury as their offensive coordinator, and certainly coming from an offense that was so spread out and air raidy like Jaden Daniels was at LSU, it incorporates a lot of horizontal throws as much as vertical throws, right? I mean, the idea is that you're spreading the field out so much sideline to sideline. And if you run a lot of wide receiver screens and throws to the flat and things like that, then you are forcing the defense to just by nature almost just think that, okay, I've got to just like move close to the line of scrimmage. We've got to move close to the line of scrimmage. We've got to rally and tackle, and boom, that's when you hit them over the top. Once they start creeping a little bit closer, pre-snap, that's when you hit them over the top. So I understand what they're going for, but Washington's pass game, third most passes behind the line of scrimmage so far this year. They have 20. And so it's something that they love to do at the one of the highest clips that we have in the league. And on the flip side, the Bengals are 26th in the league in passing yards allowed per coverage rep on passes that come from behind the line of scrimmage. So it's a little bit of maybe it's a point of contention when people watch Washington's offense and they go, stop throwing it behind the line of scrimmage, just throw it. Don't stop with the short stuff. But actually against the Bengals, it could play very well into their hands if the Bengals can't come up and rally and tackle. So it's an area that clearly the Commanders want to go for in their passing game. And it's actually a pretty good matchup that they have a chance to lean into. So I think that one matters because if you can complete those easier passes at a successful rate the way that they are, well, then you really start to open some stuff up over the top, and we'll see if Washington can get to that in a way that they really have not been able to yet so far this season. Last plus factor of the day, who you got for this matchup?
Well, it's interesting. That rolls right into the fact that the Bengals defense, and specifically their pass defense, has allowed the second fewest yards passing and only one completion over 20 yards, which is tied for first. So you have that side of the defense, I should say, that level of the defense on lock. We talked about Trey Hendrickson being the guy that's leading the team in pressures. He's leading the team in pressures with 12. The next guy down the list is Sam Hubbard with 4. I need more from the rest of the Bengals defensive line, and that is why I'm calling them my plus factor. Because again, you have the pass defense. You have up front happening with Trey Hendrickson, but he is not getting a lot of help. So I want some of these other guys to start helping him out, make this a more complete defense, as I know it can be again under Lou Anarumo, who I think is one of the best defensive coordinators we have. Figure out how to spread the wealth, spread the production, take some stuff off of Trey Hendrickson's plate so that he can just go and exploit the matchups that he's supposed to, rather than having to be the one to get pressure for this entire defense.
No, I think that's, for as much as we want to give praise to Trey Hendrickson, you do kind of need more from the rest of the defensive line. There's no doubt about it. My plus factor, I'll stick with the Cincinnati Bengals. It's Jermaine Burton. I don't know what's going on with Jermaine Burton, right? The film was great. He ends up getting drafted later than he probably should have, that his talent, says that he should have, but there were whispers like, okay, is he tough to deal with? Is he a headache in the locker room? Some people have talked about that since he's been in Cincinnati. Look, they got figured out. I don't know how they're going to figure it out, but they need to figure out. I saw that T. Higgins was back in practice, so obviously that's a big deal, but you look at Burton, he's only played 10 receiving snaps, and yet he's third on the team in total receiving yards because he's got that one catch for 47 yards. Burton comes in the game, gives them an explosive, and then boom, he's out of the game. That's it. I don't know if he's in the doghouse or what's going on here, but the idea of having Burton, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase on the field at the same time, that's the vision of what could be for this offense. And to me, figuring out whether it's Jermaine Burton side of things, whether it's coaching staff side of things, whatever, figuring out how to get him on the field more and in sync with this offense is the big time plus factor for me, for not just the Bengals this week, but also for maybe the entire season, even when they get T back, because of how explosive that this offense can be. Whoo! 16 up. 16 down. That is week 3 previewed for you guys. If you enjoyed what you heard, some of the premium stats that we were bringing to every single game, you can see those premium stats yourself by going to pff.com, getting yourself a PFF Plus subscription. So you guys can kind of do the show as we do the show, and you guys tune into it every single week. Carmen, you did a fantastic job once again. Not that that's any surprise at all whatsoever. The chat's already saying that you deserve a raise. So, just keep that in your back pocket. Screenshot it a little bit for next time. But this is a lot of fun. I hope everybody out there had fun watching and listening as well. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Carmen Vitali. Thank you guys so much for watching the PFF NFL podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.